who knows what time it is? It's time for another amazing art show. Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Amazing Art Show. I'm your host, Angie Beam, and we have got a wonderful project for you today. Let's talk about what we're going to be needing. Nothing too crazy today. You are going to need some long white paper, pretty big. You can kind of go sky's the limit. If you want to go ginormous, you can. But we're working pretty big, so you want a pretty large sheet of paper. We're going to need acrylic paints, so lots of bright, bright colors. You might also want to grab some black. You can also pull any kind of a sparkly, kind of glittery paint. Works really good for this project. And then also, if you would like to do some kind of this is like paint that you can draw with, so it's like a slick kind of a line that it can make. And then of course you'll need some brushes, water, some kind of a palette. And then the other thing that's a tad bit unusual that you're going to need is going to be like a music sheet with some notes on it. If you don't have this, which is really easy to find something on the internet, just print it off. It's no special kind of paper or anything, just regular kind of paper. And it doesn't matter the song because you're only going to see itty bitty little pieces of it anyways. All right, so that's what we need today. So let's talk about what we're making. We are going to be making some really large, very whimsical types of owls today. And so I want you, I don't know why, I'm obsessed with owls at the moment, and they're like my favorite thing in the whole wide world. And so I've just been going owl crazy. And so this is one of my projects that we've been doing at school that I really, really enjoy. And so the artist that we were kind of looking at, and I always mess up his name, so I'm going to try to do my very best. Celestino Piatti, I believe. And so it's spelt very strange. He is from Switzerland, and he was an artist. He was an illustrator. He was a book designer. He kind of jack of all trades, did all kinds of things. But he had these amazing, very kind of simple looking little owl paintings that he did. And he wrote a book that was called Happy Owl, and really cute book. It's got some great illustrations in it, which is kind of our launching off point for our project today. So having said all that, let's get started on your owl. Now I want you to take your paper, and I want you to imagine that the top part of the owl's head should go almost to the top, and then I want his little feet to come all the way down to the bottom. So you're using all your paper. I don't want to see any of these itty bitty little baby owls. We're talking like really big. So think big, draw big. And remember how we've talked about in the past, anytime you don't know how to draw something, break it down into shapes. That's how I always start a drawing. Like some people can just start right away. Like that's my husband. He can just, oh yeah, you wanted this, and he can just draw it right out. I have to break everything down into shapes, and I think that works well for you guys too. So having said that, let's get started. I'm going to start out with kind of almost like an upside down heart kind of a shape. And I'm going to use that for the owl's head. And then there were some owls that I was looking at that they have a very round head and you can't really see their ears, but I like the owls that have the little bitty tufts that kind of stick out for their ears. So I'm going to do a super fuzzy little owl, and I'm going to have him have some little crazy hairs up here on top of his head, little feathers. I want him to be very whimsical and fun. And then the other thing that I like to do is it kind of makes it into a triangle shape. So from the ears, I kind of bring this down into this area. So it's almost kind of like a little triangle. And then from here, my eyes will kind of fit into right underneath that area. And I am going to do my owl with many, many kind of circles of color around the eye. So I'm going to do several eye shapes. You'll see this is the outermost part, and I'm going to do a eyelid, and I'm going to have some big old eyelashes on there. These are just kind of whimsical and fun. And then I'm going to come in with the inner part of the eye, and I'm going to do another line coming out from there, and that'll make a little more sense in a little bit. And then in this very center part is where I'm going to have the pupil, which the pupil is the black dot that goes in the middle. And just so I can kind of remind myself, I'm going to do some little circles within the pupil just to kind of act as like a reflection. I just like the look of that. So if we look at this and kind of break it down, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of layers of the eye. So lots and lots of little layers there. And then I'm going to come in here with the beak, and I'm going to erase whatever I don't need. And then I'm going to kind of make mine, I saw a couple examples and they kind of made them look like they had little masks on. And so I'm going to try that. And I'm going to do just kind of a decorative kind of a line that goes around. This project is working a lot with line and shape, pattern especially. Very colorful and whimsical. So you'll probably hear me say those quite a bit. And then once I get done with that, I'm going to kind of chill out on that part a little bit. And then I'm going to come down and I'm going to give kind of a large oval shape for my owl's body. And then I think I'll go ahead and do the wing. And you can do the wing a lot of different ways. I'm kind of gonna do mine kind of like that. And so that's pretty even. And you can come back in if you'd like to and kind of add some other lines in here to kind of look like other feathers that are kind of layering in if you would like to. And do a couple of those. And then down here, you could even get very detailed on the feathers if you would like to. In some of the artists' paintings that I was looking at, he was really big into, like, he would get down in here on the feathers and he would like do all of the little lines and details that you would see on the feather. And you're more than welcome to do that. I did not do that. I'll show you mine here in just a little bit and you can see, but I think on this one I'm going to add a couple. All right, so I'm just about done there. I'm actually, even though the owl has got a lot of, you know, feathers in the breast area, I'm actually going to leave that plain because of a treatment that we're going to do in a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of leave that. And then I'm going to give him some little chunky little legs. And then I'm going to have him kind of sit up on a branch. And I'm going to do his, I'm going to let his claws just kind of go off the back there. And then same thing here. All right. And then from here, I want to put, I'm going to put him on a branch. So I'm going to give you just a portion of it because you won't be able to see all of it. But I'm going to do, here's kind of the branch he's sitting on, and it's attached to a tree that's going to run up the side of my paper here. So I'm going to kind of come in here and maybe come out here a little bit. And then I'm just going to kind of come in with some little tufts of some greenery. So kind of like that. All right, so once I get done with that, I'm going to add a few little lines on the tree trunk. Nothing crazy. Now, once I've done this, any kind of decorative elements that you would like to add to your owl, now's the time to do that. So I'm going to add a couple little shapes on here. And then I'm also going to do some lines down on the legs. like I said, if you wanted to do any more of those feathers, that would be a great idea. All right, so I think I'm going to call this done. All right, so then your next move is going to be to outline with the black Sharpie marker. So all I want you to do is just make sure, and my Sharpie marker is misbehaving today, so bear with me. So all I want you to do is just re-outline every single thing. That means your little details that you added, the lines, if you decided to do the feathers and you wanted to do the little details on the feathers, I want you to outline everything. All right, so I've actually got one that I've already outlined, so I'm gonna pull that one for you. All right, so I've got my little owl. Let me spin him around so I can show him. He's very cute. I like him a lot. All right, so now we are ready to get to the nitty-gritty, which is the painting part. And we're going for really crazy, fun, whimsical colors. Mr. Piatti, our artist that we were talking about, his owls most of the time are more kind of earth tones. But you guys know me and you know that I don't really do a lot of that. I like it to be really bright and colorful, and most of my kids like it that way too. So that's why we get along so well. So I'm doing really bright colors. It's up to you though what kind of colors you would like to pick for your palette. All right, so this is like a very layering kind of a process. So you're gonna start out with a color, you're gonna be putting other colors on top, other colors, you're kind of building from there. So I'm gonna start out with kind of my lightest color that I would like to do, and I'm gonna start out there, and I'm using acrylic paints, but just because I really thought that they would look nice. My paper's a good weight, so it can hold that pretty well. But if you're more into doing watercolors or possibly even an oil, that this would work great for that as well. Also, and I didn't tell you this, but you guys should know this by now, make sure that you erase your pencil marks, because I see some of mine right here. Make sure you erase your pencil marks so that they don't show through, because sometimes they will show through your paint. So you just want a nice good thick coat. What I don't want to see are any blobs and globs. So make sure that whatever paint you put on there, you smooth out really, really well. I also want to point out one thing that I've been seeing quite a bit of in my classroom. So let me just explain something to you. When you're painting something and you're doing a big area like this, you do not want to use an itty bitty little teeny tiny paintbrush, because it will take you until the end of the 6 weeks. So you want to use the biggest brush you can, kind of like medium to large on your larger areas. When you're getting in and you're doing smaller areas and detailed areas is when you want to go down to a smaller brush. So it's usually a good rule to paint everything that you can with your large brush, because it goes a whole lot faster, and then you can even just save some areas that you're going to use to do with your small brush. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say all this right here is really easy for me to get to. There isn't anything else in the way. It's just really easy for me to get to. When I get down here, if I'm worried that I might get onto the leg, I might switch to a smaller brush and just get this little bitty area with the small brush. But I've done everything else with the big brush. I don't really need to do that, so I'm just gonna rock and roll like this. All right, so I want you to continue working on getting everything painted. And like I said, because we're doing a bunch of layering, you basically want to do all of your solid colors first. So what I mean by that is, yes, we're layering. We're doing tons and tons of it. But this is kind of like your base coat that you have to start with. So if you've ever seen Mom and Dad and they are painting the house, they will typically start with a base coat that kind of, it's like a clean slate. It's one solid color, and then if they want to come back and paint stripes on the wall later, they can, but they start with one solid coat. So that's kind of what I need you to do. So if you want, you know, the tummy to be yellow and you want the wings to be purple, you're going to go ahead and paint those things, those colors. All right? Okay, so speeding right along, I'm going to put this to the side because I've got one that I've already painted and it's already got just the solid colors. Okay, so now let's spin this one around. I'll show you. All right, so this little guy has got all of the solid colors, very bright colors, as you can see. Everything's been painted, including my background. And so now I want to talk to you about some of the layering that we're going to start doing. All right, so I've got my base coat on. So I'm going to spin this around so I can see it a little bit better. And I would like to, I need to put a few other colors on here. I want to talk to you first about when you're using your brush, you can use lots of different parts of your brush. So you can use the bristles of your brush, you can use just the tip of the brush, you can use the end of the brush. So we're going to actually be using the end of our brush to do some of the patterning that we're going to be talking about here in a minute. So we're going to use lots of different parts of our brush basically. So I'm going to start with rinsing out my brush because it's always good to rinse out your brush. And then I'm going to get into my red paint and I'm going to start that process of layering. So I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to actually, instead of just dipping the tip in like I normally would when I'm painting something, I'm going to dip the whole thing in there. And I've kind of got my brush, when I rinsed it out and I dried it off with the paper towel, I kind of formed it back into the form that it's naturally supposed to be in, because that works good for what I'm about to be doing next. So basically it's almost like a stamping technique. I'm just going to take it and I'm going to press it down, and it creates, if you've got your brush right, it kind of creates like a little teardrop shape almost. It kind of looks like a watermelon seed to me. And then I'm going to scoot down. I'm going to give myself enough room so that I can do some other layers in there as well. And if it doesn't turn out, you know, perfect, this is one of those projects. It does not have to be perfect. You can also flip your brush over. That might help. Yeah, I like that better. And then you're just going to keep filling in. And you're creating a pattern with your brush. And once again, I'm not really using I'm using like the side of the brush, the side of the bristles. And it works good if you'll just keep flipping your brush. And I'm going to go all the way down here into the leg area. And I'm even going to do a couple kind of in here. I can't really get a whole one on there. All right, so now I'm going to let that kind of sit for a second. And then while that is sitting, I'm going to work on some other patterning that we're going to do. And this time, I'm going to pull out my trusty small brush because I'm doing small details. So I'm going to get my smaller brush, and I'm going to actually, let's see here. I think I'm going to do some lighter orange stripes on the leg. Now, I will tell you this. Do your best to try to stay, oh my lands, my brush nearly fell out of my hand. Do your best to try to stay in the lines, like don't go past your Sharpie line. But if you do, you know, you can always go back as an extra step and kind of clean up your edges, which you guys know that I do a lot. I think it always kind of gives your artwork a very finished look. So I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to do some blue stripes that'll go next to the lighter orange stripes that I had. There's kind of no rhyme or reason to what order you want to do this in. All right. Okay, so now we've talked about using the tip of your brush. We've talked about using the side of your brush. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about using the end of your brush. And so you're going to use like basically all three of those techniques. And I think I want my other brush back again. If you want small dots, you're going to use your small brush. If you want larger dots, you're going to want to use your larger brush. So you can see here what a small circle that's going to give me on the end versus, you know, here's even a medium size, so it's going to be a little bit bigger. So you can add some variety to your work by, you know, adjusting the size of your dots. All right, so I'm going to take this. I'm using the end. It looks like I've already done that. I didn't rinse very well. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing my, trying to decide, I think I'm going to do some light. And these will be very subtle here for a second, so kind of bear with me. So I'm just doing a lighter dot, and you can usually get about 2 dots before you have to reload. And the other thing, and I've already made the mistake, but it wasn't too bad. You want to make sure as you're working, you've got a lot of wet paint on here, so you want to keep your arm up out of it. So I usually will take my finger and I'll kind of balance it, and then I'll put it down instead of resting my arm down. So that's a good tip for you guys. All right, so I've got the lighter color, and I think I'm going to do a little bit of this lighter blue. I want to try as best I can to tie in all of the colors that I've used. We've talked about working in 3s before, and so I've got this lighter blue in my background, and I don't have it very many other places. I do have it a little bit here, so now I need my 3rd place that I'm going to kind of tie it in. So I'm going to do it up here. And the blue and the orange play really well off one another. Complements, and so they complement one another. And I don't have like a set number that I'm going for. I'm just kind of looking and eyeballing it, and if I think that I need more, I just put a couple more. All right, so I've now used the end. Now from there, you can just kind of go bananas. You're going to layer, 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 layer. So at this point, my red little dots that I've added are pretty close to being dry. So I think I'm going to come in and I'm going to start on my 2nd layer. And I can actually, you could do it right over the red if you wanted to. You could do it just a little to the side. You could do it on your in-between spaces. It's up to you. You get to decide. I'm trying to decide what I want to do as I'm saying it. I think I'm going to go right down below. And you're going to do this a lot of times of this, you know, coming in and adding the extra color. I'm not being quite as precise with these second ones, but you get the gist. All right, so while I finish up adding my dots here, let's go to today's art quote. Every artist was first an amateur. Ralph Waldo Emerson. One other thing I wanted to mention really, really quick is I added on, when we were talking about those details, on mine I had added right here along the eye, I came in and did some like little triangle shapes. So something else that you can do is to come in with just a really light, by using just the end bristles of your brush, you can come in with a really light little line just to kind of add some, just a little pop of color up there. All right, so I'm going to switch over to my almost finished product so we can look at that. All right, so here we go. You can see many, 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 many layers, and you can see lots of dots. So you see how I've taken the end of my brush, and you'll see sometimes the dots are larger, sometimes they're smaller and skinnier, sometimes I've used a combination of both. Like here they kind of go from big and they get small towards the center. And so you can do that. Next couple things that I would like for you to do is, this is your time to break out your glitter and go over any areas that you would like to kind of emphasize. And so I did around the face, kind of the heart part of the face, and I also did the eyes. And I think I'm also going to do a little bit, and I'm using a different glitter than what I had before. And kind of decide, do you want it to be on the body? Do you want it to be on the wings? Where do you want it to be? The one thing I would suggest is don't do it over the whole entire thing. The whole object is, you know, you want to pick places where you want people's eyes to focus. You don't want to do the whole thing, because then that kind of spoils the surprise. So you want them to kind of be able to look at it, and they can pick up parts of it that they really, really like. So if you want to emphasize something, you might want to put some glitter on it, or it might have shiny paint on it, or it might have a really, really bold and striking kind of a pattern on it that's different than some of your other patterns that you have. So I think I'm going to do, I really like how my wings turned out, so I'm going to do glitter on my wings. I'm not going to do it on the body, and I'm not going to do it on any other part of the head. I've just picked around the eyes, a little bit around the head, and then I'm doing my wings. All right, now, the background that we drew for this project is fairly minimal in that it's really just a tree. There weren't just a ton of details in there. And so a couple things that I'd thought about. You can definitely leave it like that, and then your owl is definitely, you know, the center of attention, which we all want. But I was thinking of, I wanted to kind of incorporate how, you know, when you're outside and it's, well, I don't know if you've ever heard this before. Some of you may not have ever heard this, but where my parents' house was, we lived really close to this, it was a vacant lot, so there were all kinds of animals, and there were creeks and snakes, and we made forts and all kinds of stuff. But at night, you would be outside real late, and you could hear the owls, and it's a very distinct, you know, kind of a sound that they make. And so it always kind of made me think about, you know, even though it doesn't sound like a song that you and I necessarily hear, it always made me think about that they were, you know, they were singing their little owl song. So I decided that that's where we would kind of incorporate the music notes. So I took some of my glitter, and I had green glitter, and it's just very subtle, it's not a lot, and I took my paper and folded it a couple times. It doesn't matter what part of it you get, because you're not going to be able to see that much of it anyways. And all I want you to do is just cut out some little leaf shapes. And you probably want some that are medium, some that are smaller. You might do a couple that are kind of large, but nothing too big because your tree isn't that big. And then you'll put a little bit of glitter on them. And then when you get done, they will look, you know, kind of like this. So it's just a little bit of glitter, and then I folded them in half. And then all you're going to do is you'll just take your glue, and you're just going to glue them down in a couple little places. And you just get just a little bit of attention drawn to your tree up there. And you can kind of scatter those around. And then last but not least, don't forget, if you needed to go back in and re-outline anything, maybe you went over the lines a little bit, you know, definitely take the time to go back and fix that. It really makes a big difference in your artwork. So you can go back in and add those other little details. And I'd mentioned to you earlier in the show about the slick paints. And something else that I've done in the past, I didn't do it on this one, but I do think it would probably be a pretty cool thing to do. You could go back, instead of re-outlining with your marker, you could go back and re-outline with this stuff. And it's three-dimensional, so it stands up off your paper. It really gives it a really nice look. So I would recommend, if you're going to do this before you glue your little leaf shapes on, because it kind of gets hard to work around your leaves. So that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Now go out and make some amazing art.